This is CBC Here and Now.
What does the nonprofit group Thrive have in common with these students from the School of Medicine?
Thrive is doing a lot of good work.
Really great partnership, and we were thrilled to be selected.
The answer is coming up.
Mental health and addiction services in Labrador need to be improved, and so do factors impacting people's quality of life.
Suicide is about losing hope.
You're already, in a dark place as it is.
That's what two people from the region say, coming up.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. CBC News has learned of another incident involving inappropriate photos taken of a patient in long-term care. This time within the Western Health region. The Health Minister confirmed this afternoon that an incident took place. The CBC's Ariana Kelland has our top story.
Sources tell CBC News another inappropriate photo was taken of a man in long-term care. It happened at a facility in the Western Health region within the last several months, but today, Minister Tom Osborne said he wasn't told until 2 weeks ago.
Well, it's obviously very concerning anytime a situation like this happens. It is concerning, it's unacceptable.
CBC News contacted Western Health around that same time 2 weeks ago to inquire about a possible privacy breach in one of its long-term care homes. A spokesperson would not confirm an incident took place, nor would they grant an interview, instead sending this generic statement. Unacceptable, says Osborne.
I think it's important that all health authorities provide the general public with any information surrounding a mishap within the health authority. This is the people's health. The general public have a right to know when something is going against the proper standards, the proper protocols, and what is expected within our health authorities.
But Osborne is not confirming how many healthcare professionals are under investigation, nor would he say if the investigations involve registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, or personal care attendants.
We need to allow the investigation to unfold. We wouldn't want to make an allegation against somebody who may not have had any involvement. An investigation will determine those involved, and once we understand the scope of individuals involved and a full understanding of the situation, we will deal with it.
Last Tuesday, Central Health confirmed 7 residents of the Baie-Verte Peninsula Health Centre had their privacy breached in some way. In some cases, inappropriate photos were taken. Osborne says he is committing to a full review of long-term care facilities in the province, a promise in the wake of calls to action from the Seniors Advocate. Neither the colleges of registered nurses or licensed practical nurses would confirm whether its members were involved or not. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
Jury selection in a murder trial in Happy Valley Goose Bay is taking longer than expected. Vincent Ward is charged with the second-degree murder of Vincent Dampierre of Montreal. Dampierre was shot and died in Labrador City in April of 2018. Now, at the time, police said the two men knew each other. Jury selection began yesterday morning in Labrador, but some members had to be dismissed. Once the jury is finalized, opening statements are expected to begin tomorrow morning, and the trial is scheduled to last for several weeks. Well, it's been 15 months since Roy Freak was shot and killed by police in Grand Falls, Windsor. In September, the Serious Incident Response Team cleared the officer involved of any criminal charges. But as Here and Now's Garrett Berry reports, the woman at the center of the incident says she still has many questions.
I absolutely believe 100% in my heart that it was preventable.
Amanda Antle understands why police fired 2 bullets that night when her ex-boyfriend, Roy Freak, broke into her house and threatened her with a knife. What she can't understand is why Freak was allowed to leave court custody just hours earlier.
He was clearly arrested for the no contact order, and the judge himself allowed him to go out on bail after uttering death threats. They were made quite aware when the RCMP came and talked to me after his arrest that Roy had a mental health issue.
Antle got a warning when he was released from Freak's father, who said he was out on the street and he was angry.
Saying, I'm going and I'm going to kill her. Flat out, I'm going to kill her. She put me here, I'm going to kill her.
She says if Freak's own father knew that he was headed for her, then the police and the court should have known that Freak was in no state to be released.
They knew everything they needed to know.
The Serious Incident Response Team report reveals that the officer who fired 2 bullets also helped release Freak from the lockup. The previous day, that officer wrote that Freak was visibly angry and upset when he left the police detachment. Angry because he had no truck, no ride, no way home to Fogo Island. Freak and Antle spent 10 years together, but he struggled greatly with addiction. That overshadowed their lives. That night, when Antle heard glass break in her house, she says she knew it was Roy breaking in.
They could have taken him and brought him to another town. They could have brought him to the ferry. Like, why were these things not done?
In a statement, the RCMP said it had no authority to hold Freak any longer. A judge ordered his release, and being angry is not a crime. Now that the police oversight investigation is over, Antle says she doesn't know where to turn with her questions and concerns.
I'm always going to have that trouble sleeping. I'm always going to have these unanswered questions, and like when my toddler is old enough to ask me these questions, how can I give them answers if I don't have them?
Garrett Berry, CBC News, Grand Falls, Windsor.
Well, if you see some suspicious activity at Deer Lake Airport tomorrow, don't be alarmed. The airport will be doing an emergency exercise from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. People can expect to see smoke, fire trucks, ambulances, and police all practicing the response to a major incident of some sort. The Deer Lake Airport Authority says the exercise will not interfere with normal operations and flights will not be affected by the training exercise.
Another mild day out there across most areas across the province. Take a look at this. Record warmth in Labrador, 18.2 degrees in Wabush today. That not only broke a record, but it's also the latest that they've reached, or that you've reached, 18 degrees. Last time this happened was October 12th, 2003. So it was nearly 2 weeks later that we're seeing these mild temperatures. Now they are going to continue for another day or so for you up across Labrador, but the hot spot today was in Badger. Look at that, -1 overnight by 7 a.m. By the time you got to 3 and 4 o'clock this afternoon, your temperatures were in the low 20s, 21 degrees, in fact, for you in Badger. And we saw a similar warm up, not nearly as cold, though, this morning across St. John's, but reaching about 17 degrees this afternoon. Now, we are going to see these mild temperatures continue for at least another couple of days. Tomorrow could reach the 20-degree mark again through parts of central, maybe even eastern portions of the island. And that will continue as we get into Thursday as well. The southerly air bringing some muggy conditions as well. Yes, I said muggy, and we're at the end of October. I'll get into the full forecast coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, there's a call tonight for better mental health and addiction services in Labrador. It comes from some people who say they know all too well that the region is in dire need of help. Here Now's Henrika Wilhelm has that story tonight, but we want to let you know that it does deal with information about suicide in residential schools.
A lot of people are falling through the cracks.
Keith Fitzpatrick wants more long-term mental health and addiction services in Labrador. Fitzpatrick lives with anxiety and depression and is a recovering addict. He says he's had to fight for care.
It's a fight that you shouldn't have to have because you're already, in a dark place as it is. So then you got to fight with people to get help. It's like telling a cancer patient, no, we're not going to give you chemo, go ahead and die. Because mental health, in the end, will kill if it's not treated.
The number of suicides in the Labrador-Grenfell Health region doubled to 19 from 2020 to 2021. But that number is much more stark when looked at statistically. The rate per 100,000 was 15 for Eastern Health, more than 6 for Central, and more than 11 in Western. But when that data is applied to Labrador-Grenfell, its numbers rise to 51. Provincially, the rate was less than 16 people per 100,000. That's compared to just below 13 nationally. Fitzpatrick wants more continuity of care, treatment facilities and peer support, and shorter wait times. He says he also knows how the rising cost of living can affect mental health.
you're poor, you can't afford anything, you can't have a life, you're just barely making ends meet, barely have enough to eat, and then your mental health isn't good on top of that, the first thing you're thinking is suicide for some people.
Tongat Mountains MHA Leila Evans is also familiar with that impact. Evans says that lack of access to an adequate amount of money and food in northern Labrador is a big factor.
Suicide is about losing hope. And in actual fact, if you're hungry, or if your children are hungry, if your seniors are hungry, your elders are hungry, and you can't help them get food to not be hungry, even the adults are driven to suicide.
Evans criticizes the higher cost of oil and gas in the region, as well as a teacher shortage causing students to drop their academic courses. She says all that comes on top of the lingering effects of intergenerational trauma resulting from residential schools.
At the end of the day, our people are killing ourselves, and also people are dying from curable health conditions. And a lot of those people are my friends and my family.
Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, if you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help. You can call the Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-833-456-4566 or the Kids Help phone. That number is 1-800-668-6868, and you'll also find the story on our website, cbc.ca/NL, and we'll have more resources listed there as well. Well, police are looking for a pair of thieves who've been stealing a lot of perfume from Shoppers Drug Mart stores. Last night alone, they made away with more than $8,000 worth of fragrances from a store in Gander. The RCMP say the man and woman are also suspected of significant thefts of perfume from other Shoppers locations on the Northeast Avalon. Well, now to some political news. Last night, a Liberal MP from this province sided with federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. It was over a motion to exempt home heating fuel from the federal carbon tax. As Here and Now's Daryl Roberts reports, that MP says he was simply voting with his conscience.
Mr. McDonald, Avalon.
Ken McDonald, Liberal MP for the Avalon, received a round of applause last night, but not from his own caucus. McDonald voted in favor of a Conservative motion to scrap the federal carbon tax on home heating, the only Liberal MP to do so.
To me, there are just too many people out there right now with the cost of affordability and trying to buy groceries and other necessities. I just thought it was wrong to bring that tax in right now at this time.
The federal carbon tax is set to triple by 2030. Next year, the price on pollution will increase annually by $15 a ton, up from $10. The federal Liberals say the tax is important for transitioning away from fossil fuels, while the federal Conservatives say the tax will make life unaffordable. Premier Andrew Fishery has written to Federal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault, begging him to exempt home heating fuel from the tax.
We make the position that this is not the right time, that this instrument should be paused right now, given the inflationary pressures that exist on households across the province, Mr. Speaker.
Fury's letter got the attention of the federal Conservative leader, who quoted it in the House of Commons.
Added to today's price, the carbon tax would result in a total cost increase of 80% compared to 1 year ago. End quote. That is from a Liberal premier.
The motion was defeated last night. McDonald says he made his position known last week and hasn't experienced any backlash from his colleagues. But Alex Marland, a political scientist at Memorial University, says backlash may still come, especially since carbon tax is a core part of the 2021 Liberal election platform.
Do they want to send a message to every other Liberal MP and say, you know, you better not think about doing this. This is not something we're going to tolerate. And so what message will they send? Is it through demoting Mr. McDonald off a committee, for example? Or is it just simply not providing him with as many opportunities? So when there's opportunities for speaking events, when there's opportunities to go in the media, all of a sudden they don't go towards him for a little bit. So my own prediction would be that he's going to get the cold shoulder.
McDonald says there hasn't been any fallout yet, but he's prepared to face any consequences that come. Daryl Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
The province will put more money into the pockets of some vulnerable youth in the new year. It's a program aimed at providing them with basic income. Here Now's Heather Gillis explains. Apologies there. We're having a technical issue with that story. Hopefully we'll get back to it in a moment. Well, moving on, a group of medical students has taken on a steep challenge. They've been scaling Signal Hill every day this month. It's part of Hills for Humanity, an event that sees future doctors give back to their communities. This year's money will go to Thrive, and that organization says the help couldn't have come at a better time. Here now's Jeremy Eaton explains.
Street lights are still on when they start at the base of Signal Hill. The runs happen in the early morning, the hikes in the afternoon. Today, the sun is just starting to rise when they begin the climb up. It's not new. It's an annual med school fundraiser that gets them outside of offices and hospitals.
There's a bit of siloing away with healthcare sometimes, and we don't always get the opportunity to engage with the community until people are sick or in the healthcare setting. So getting that early engagement, I think, is something that's really critical to promote a healthier community and for us to better understand the needs of the community.
It's a long way up Cabot Tower, but they're doing it daily for a good cause. Thrive is a not-for-profit in St. John's that helps vulnerable people through community outreach. It tries to fill in gaps in services. Demand is growing, but their budget isn't.
Cost of everything has increased, so that obviously impacts when we're trying to purchase. Our budgets are not going as far. And there's also pressure on folks who generally are like individual donors and donating to us. They're feeling the pinch, so their ability to contribute to charitable organizations are also impacted. So we're getting hit from every angle.
The goal of these go-getters is to try and raise $5,000 for Thrive.
Our budget right now is really tight, but we're really concerned for the impacts of as winter comes on. I mean, one of the things we've consistently heard from the people we're supporting is they're really struggling, obviously, to pay for food, transportation, some of those basics, but power bills are a huge pressure point for people.
These soon-to-be doctors say they're happy to help out a group doing such wonderful work.
Looking at healthcare and the way we think of health, kind of going beyond the healthcare model and the importance of the social determinants of health and addressing those factors such as education, income, and just housing and food security. Thrive is doing a lot of work that's doing that, and I think as future medical learners it's important to kind of demonstrate and recognize that importance and try to do work to address them ourselves.
While the students beat the feet up Signal Hill every day this month, Thrive says it's happily accepting all forms of donations.
We're always in desperate need for particularly men's footwear, so we collect that. Outerwear, like winter coats, both men's and women's, always in need of.
Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, now back to a story we tried to bring you a moment ago. The province is planning to put more money into the pockets of some vulnerable youth in the new year with a basic income. Here now's Heather Gillis has more.
Some of the most vulnerable young people in the province, those transitioning out of the child welfare system, will get a boost come January 1st. 300 of them between 16 and 21 will get a targeted basic income from the provincial government. It amounts to about $600 a month more than what they already receive, says Children, Seniors and Social Development Minister John Abbott.
The recommendations from the Health Accord is that they need more support, both financial and programming, and that's what we are doing here today.
He says the program will cost about $3 million a year. But it's not just about the money. Abbott says government will also help them with mental health and addictions, life skills, getting into school, or the workforce. He says it all aligns with the Health Accord because it'll boost factors that help people lead healthier lives.
Ideally, if this program works the way we think it will, then that will lead to less reliance on income support and actually that the folks will live better, productive lives. It's going to make a huge difference.
Rick Kelly is the executive director of Waypoints, which houses some youth in care. Kelly says kids eligible for the program are excited.
We all know the cost of living has gone up, the cost of everything has gone up, and like living on your own after coming out of care can be really difficult. So they're very impressed with this.
Minister Abbott says it's too early to say if a basic income could be expanded more widely in the province to other populations. He says there will be an all-party committee to look at the issue to see what its future may hold.
NDP MHA Jim Dinn wants in on the committee and says a basic income is something his party has called for.
It's a step in the right direction. It's an acknowledgement that income plays a significant role in lifting people out of poverty and giving them choices.
But Dinn would like to see a basic income. CBC News, St. John's.
Remember in the summer when we talked about the dew points? Well, they're on the rise, and that means we're going to see some humid weather this week. I'll get into the details coming up.
We only see about a third of right whale mortalities. Most of right whales that die, we do not see.
The decline of the North Atlantic right whale. What role does the East Coast fishery play in rebounding the species? That's coming up after Ashley's weather. Ashley, you used two words earlier that I would not expect to hear from you at the end of October, muggy and humid.
I know.
So what's going on with that?
Well, it's the setup that we're in right now. You know, today was quite mild out there across the province, and this pattern is going to continue. So it really is just where some of the ridges and the troughs are sitting in the atmosphere. So let's take a look. We'll add some pretty colors to it just to show you. See how the yellows and the oranges are up around Newfoundland and Labrador, and that's what we call ridging. So when we start to see that, we see some of that milder air from the southern areas of North America and really the Atlantic move a little bit further north. And this trend is generally going to continue through Thursday. We'll get back into even a more southerly flow, and that's what's going to bring some of that humid air in, or at least muggy air. And then we're going to pay attention to this trough here. That is going to bring in some colder air, particularly up across Labrador as we get into Friday. But note what happens. We're still kind of into some of that ridging, not quite as significant, but into that as we head into Friday. And then it will return as we get into next week, again, with some of that ridging happening up across Labrador as well as we get into Monday and Tuesday. So expect some of these milder conditions to return right as we head into next week. That's the beginning of November. We could be seeing those temperatures in the teens. That is well above where we should be sitting this time of year. So take a look at temperatures today. 17 in St. John's, 20 in Terra Nova, a number of areas seeing those temperatures in the 20-degree range. Same thing for Deer Lake, Badger, you were the hot spot today. Corner Brook, 20 degrees today, about 18 in Lab City, but again, still well above where you should be sitting along coastal areas of Labrador. That's where that cooler air is. Even Northern Peninsula, only about 10 degrees today in St. Anthony. So current conditions outside right now, sun's setting, but still a beautiful evening. Not a whole lot happening on the water either, so some light winds tonight. Temperatures now have dropped to about 14 degrees. Winds out of the west around 9 kilometers per hour, so not a whole lot to speak of. But take a look at that dew point. So 9 degrees is where it's sitting right now, but as we head through the next couple of days, that is going to rise. So it's not going to feel humid like it did this summer, but it'll feel a bit muggy certainly for eastern areas of the island as we get into Thursday. And then eventually a cold front's going to move through, and that is going to drop like a rock with some drier air. And we're going to see that through central and western areas of the island as well. This is where we're actually going to see some of the more muggy conditions. So you'll definitely note that for your Thursday. So taking a look at what's going on right now, you have some showers working their way across parts of Ontario. Nothing really going on for Atlantic Canada, just some cloud cover, but there is a chance we will see some showers tonight as some of that cloud cover starts to move in. Some areas of fog as well along southern coastal areas of the island. So there's a look at those showers. At least the potential for some showers tonight. This will likely fall as drizzle, and then again some of that fog moving a little bit further inland tonight. But along the west coast, south coast, and even parts of Labrador, you may see those showers, particularly as we get into the early morning hours. Don't be surprised to see some drizzle for the Avalon, even parts of most of eastern Newfoundland really will see that. Temperatures tonight are going to stay mild again, 11 degrees overnight for Lab City. Same thing for Happy Valley Goose Bay. Single-digit temperatures for the Northern Peninsula, coastal areas of Labrador. Otherwise, between 8 to 11 degrees. Those lower-lying areas may drop a little bit more than that. But overall, pretty nice evening. 30 winds around out of the west, around 30 kilometers per hour for the most part. But then as we head through tomorrow, there will be a little bit more cloud cover today than there was, will be a little bit more cloud cover tomorrow rather than there is today. But the chance of showers is going to stick around again for the west coast, south coast, but we'll likely see some sun peek out at times. But again, won't nearly be as cloudy as it is today. Taking a look at the temperatures for tomorrow, another beautiful day, 18 degrees in St. John's with those winds. Generally light, 15 to 20 kilometers per hour as you head towards central Newfoundland. Again, we could see pockets of 20 degrees, but overall the high teens, and then staying a bit more cloudy towards the west coast. Anywhere from 14 to 18 degrees is your daytime highs, and then double digits for the Northern Peninsula, but just barely. And then for Labrador, another absolutely gorgeous day as far as temperatures go. 17 degrees in Lab City. Same thing for Happy Valley Goose Bay. And then it's coastal areas of Labrador. It's your turn now to see those temperatures in the teens. Again, they'll stick around for another day with a big drop coming for the weekend. I'll get into those details coming up.
The number of North Atlantic right whales continues to decline. That's according to the latest report from a consortium of Canadian and U.S. scientists. Here in Atlantic Canada, that means the pressure is on to maintain strict fishery measures to better protect the endangered species. The CBC's Paul Withers reports.
The annual estimate is based on sightings and modeling on how many right whales are believed to be alive. The 2021 estimate released Monday puts the survivors at 340 animals.
This population is still in a downward trend. And so that is the biggest take home.
The crisis hit in 2017 when 12 died in Canadian waters and 5 more in the U.S. In recent years, that curve has flattened somewhat, according to the North Atlantic Right Whale Consortium.
What we're hopeful that we're seeing is sort of the floor of the decline. And we would hope, and we're optimistic, that in the next year or two, we may see the inflection of that population graph shift and start heading upwards.
In response to the crisis, Canada moved to reduce the risk of entanglements by imposing sweeping fishing area closures whenever whales are sighted.
I think it's phenomenal to me. Are currently an excellent example of what can be done.
Last week, a group of Canadian marine scientists and conservation groups appeared before a parliamentary committee studying Canada's efforts to protect the whales, which received wide praise.
I would say that Canada has done an incredible job.
The Dean of Right Whale Scientists was one. It was a contrast with American environmentalists who say Canada has not gone far enough. One NGO, Seafood Watch, recommended consumers stop buying Canadian snow crab and lobster because of the risk posed to whales.
I think they made a huge mistake in lumping U.S. and Canadian fisheries all into one red listing measure. These are very different fisheries pursued at very different times of the years with very different protection measures for right whales. And I will add again that I think our Canadian measures exceed those in the U.S. They may not still yet be enough.
No right whale deaths have been reported in Canada for 3 years, but Heather Pettis is taking no comfort in that.
We know that we only see about a third of right whale mortalities. Most of right whales that die, we do not see. So to say that there have been 0 mortalities in Canadian waters is probably inaccurate. We haven't detected any. That doesn't mean that there have been 0 mortalities. We also know that there have been several entanglements of whales, and again, both countries, who are significantly injured, and we haven't seen them again.
Both she and other Canadian scientists agree that management measures to protect whales should remain in place if the population is ever going to recover. Paul Withers, CBC News, Halifax.
We all know food security is a major issue in this province, but why don't we just grow greens indoors year-round? Well, coming up, we'll introduce you to the owner of a Mount Pearl business who's finding new ways to keep food local. we talk about food security in this province, there are some unsettling statistics. For example, according to Food First NL, 71% of the food we eat is imported. And if ferries were to stop running, the island only has 2 or 3 days worth of fresh produce. Well, today, those problems are exacerbated by the rising cost of living, climate change, and the risk of supply chain interruptions. One Mount Pearl company has a potential solution: hydroponic farming. Scott Neary showed us around his operation and talked about the potential for growth year-round.
The whole process starts here with the seedling germination in this. We'll spend a couple weeks in this big propagation tower, and then we move on into our bigger structures here that host the product for the other little bit. We grow a range of vegetables, mostly leafy greens, herbs, and microgreens. We have a range of different types of lettuce that we do in a mix. We're also experimenting with kale and arugula. Soon this winter we hope to be doing some spinach and things like bok choy. We're always experimenting with new things to see what's popular. And then we do lots of herbs. So we have fresh cilantro, fresh basil, fresh parsley, and smaller quantities of other herbs that we're experimenting with, like rosemary and thyme and mint. So one of the cool things about these towers is they're very accessible and handy to be able to manipulate. So they just feed from the top here with this slow drip, and that just goes all the way down the gutter until it hits the bottom and recirculates in our system. So if you were to picture all of these little gutters spaced out on the ground and spaced so you can walk in between them, this would take acres and acres of land for what we have in about 1,200 square feet. So we're also able to do away with a lot of the big fossil fuel burning machinery. We don't have to till our land. We don't need to turn the land. We don't need to use all of these, big sprayers and things like that. We can simplify the process, take a lot of the equipment out of it, and we can really create a huge density of food in such a small place. So for example, we probably do 50 to 100 pounds a week in leafy greens, as well as 30 to 50 pounds a week in herbs. So over the year, we're easily feeding about 200 families a year right now, every week. But we hope that within fine-tuning this facility, we can almost double that as well. We do one-time orders as well as subscriptions, but our subscriptions are our main product. So we have over 150 to 200 families at a time every week getting different subscriptions. We have multiple different packaging plans available depending on what people need or their family size and things like that. By localizing the food production, we can get food to people faster, which makes a big difference in the nutrient content. So as soon as something is harvested and begins its long journey from California or beyond to Newfoundland, it is losing nutrients along the way, as well as creating a big carbon footprint along its way here too. So not only are our products higher in nutrients and longer lasting, but they come with a lower carbon footprint, and with scale, we believe that we'll be able to actually provide all of these benefits at a price that's even lower than what the current imports are. Well, there's lots of electricity being used, that's for sure. But we're lucky in that as technology advances in its exponential pattern, so do the costs of lighting technology going down. So lights are getting more and more efficient every year, making this more and more viable as time goes on. But we also make do with different things. Like we always thought that we'd have a big heating problem in the winter here, but the lights themselves are giving off enough heat to heat this place. So an operation like this can have a big upfront cost, but once you're set up and get going and really figure out the ins and outs of it, you can really start to produce food at a really low marginal cost, and especially with scale.
This seems kind of like a no-brainer when you look at, particularly the island of Newfoundland and the food security issues here. How come we don't have more of this going right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I've asked myself this question quite a bit, and it's not for lack of research and technology. This is happening in other places of the world. It's even happening in other provinces in Canada that are being big leaders in this. Quebec, BC, and Ontario are really starting to dive deep in these things. And it's something that can really be a big industry for us to localize our food production, since we import 70% of the food we eat. If we can localize that, keep that money here, create more jobs, I think it would be really beneficial. And right now, I think there's big barriers to entry in that, we're doing something that's never been successful here on a large scale before. And it can be tough for people to take on that kind of risk. But when it comes to solving big problems, sometimes you need to accept risk and do bold things.
And you mentioned about how, big productions like this haven't been successful before, and it has been tried, as we all know, with the Sprung greenhouse. Do you think that this kind of the specter of that failed project has been a hindrance when it comes to getting this sort of thing on the go?
Yeah, everyone's really got a bad taste in their mouth from that project, and I totally understand, because it was such a disappointment, and it was way ahead of its time, and it could have been such a cool project. But that's our case study of what not to do. We really dive in deep on our market research and make sure we're producing the products that people want. And the advances of technology in the past couple of decades really have driven the cost down to a point where we don't need heavy subsidization to be profitable. This business is profitable on its own. Really, it's all about not only securing our food supply so that we're protected in an emergency that is probably inevitable, especially with extreme weather conditions, threatening our ports. So not only is it about securing that food supply, it's about helping provide healthier options to people of Newfoundland so we can reduce our stress on the healthcare system, so we can improve our mental health here, so we can bring down the rates of heart disease and diabetes. And all while doing that, keep the money that we're currently sending away to foreign food producers, keep that in the province, create new jobs, and just really help facilitate a more prosperous province and help the people just be healthier and happier.
And I guess, these days we know how quickly the world can change. The less we rely on foreign supply, probably the better.
Yeah, absolutely, because in times of crisis, a country is going to look after their own citizens first. And the scary thing is how much we're relying on foreign countries for our food. Ukraine is one of the biggest food producers in the world, and even if we're not getting our food from there, supply chain disruptions there are going to drive up our food costs across the board. So no matter what is coming, whether climate change disasters, extreme weather, war, depression or recession, what we need is to know that we have our food taken care of and that we can feed our people. And because we're already struggling with nutrition and physical health here, if things get any worse with our food supply, that could be really detrimental to our ability to be a productive province.
Well, Scott Neary, thank you so much for showing us around. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for visiting.
Provincial health officials have been asking people to keep practicing COVID safety measures, but now that same message is coming from federal officials. That story is coming up. A $40 billion child welfare deal between First Nations and the federal government has been rejected by the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. In its summary decision, the tribunal says the agreement has not met all of its orders and that some people who are eligible for compensation are not included in the deal. Now, the Assembly, First Nations, and the federal government are calling the decision disappointing, but Ottawa is pledging to keep working toward a solution. The group that asked the tribunal to send the agreement back to the negotiating table says today's decision is a chance to get the deal right.
This isn't a doomsday kind of scenario. It's actually a good scenario where we're making sure that we're taking care of everyone. And that's consistent with our First Nations values. It's also consistent with human rights standards.
There's disappointment. This was a compensation plan designed by First Nations people for First Nations people in a culturally specific way. My commitment to those partners is that we'll be with them for the long haul to get to an agreement.
Well, with winter quickly approaching, health experts are reminding Canadians to keep practicing the safety measures they learned during the pandemic. And the reason? COVID hospitalizations are up, and the number of people getting boosters is down, and we may have to be ready for new variants. Christine Birak reports.
Heading into another pandemic winter, it's hard to predict the road ahead. But experts insist we could be navigating some really hard turns. While we can't see whether a brand new variant is around the corner, we do know hospitalizations are rising, new Omicron subvariants are spreading, and uptake of the latest booster is slow.
In healthcare terms, the next 2 or 3 months are likely to be really challenging again.
This is what it looks like inside Humber River Hospital and many other ERs right across the country.
It's one patient after one patient after one patient after another. It's kind of hard for us to take a break for a moment to pause.
Add to that, in the Southern Hemisphere, Australia saw one of its worst flu seasons in years. And the U.S. is already reporting an early surge in flu cases.
You're seeing a tidal wave sweeping across this country right now.
Here at home, the number of children landing in ERs sick with viral illnesses is already spiking. And of course, there's COVID. The number of Canadians now hospitalized with COVID-19 is around 4,000. That's almost twice as many as last year, 4 times more than in 2020.
If things going the way we're going, that there'd be more volume, more pressure on colleagues and nurses.
At the same time, new variants are emerging around the globe.
There are now new Omicron subvariants circulating that are more immune evasive, unfortunately, and potentially more transmissible.
Meaning new variants could drive new COVID waves as people move back indoors. Still, Canadians can avoid crowded emergency rooms by masking indoors, staying home when you're sick, and getting the latest booster. And Rasmussen and other experts insist provinces do not need to make people wait 6 months before getting their next shot.
If you can wait at least 4 months, essentially you're giving your immune system time to sort of absorb everything it learned during its last encounter with either a vaccine or the virus itself, and it's ready essentially to learn more about Omicron.
But experts insist if Canadians can slow down and remember what's been learned, we can safely navigate the pandemic road ahead. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, the Royal Canadian Legion's National Poppy campaign is underway, and the Governor General has received the first one. Legion officials presented Mary Simon with her poppy at a special ceremony at Rideau Hall. Simon is also Canada's Commander-in-Chief. The Governor-General then presented poppies to several veterans who were in attendance. The poppy campaign runs until Remembrance Day on November 11th. It raises funds to support veterans and their families. The familiar poppy boxes will start showing up on Friday. for a look at the long range, and I guess these warm temperatures are going to be sticking around for a little bit longer.
They are, yeah, certainly into Thursday. That's when we're going to start to see some of that more humid air move in, or the muggy air move in, but it is going to come at a cost. We're going to see some showers. However, it's been fairly dry for October, so this is not a bad thing.
Need it.
Exactly, but let's take a look at what's going on. So there we go. There's that next system that's going to move in. Some rain across Labrador and eventually across the island as well as we get into the afternoon. We're seeing those southerly winds, and that is what's going to bring in some of that more muggy air. Now, there's a cold front associated with this as well, and as we head into the afternoon, temperatures, although will start mild for you in Lab West, about 13 degrees, they're going to drop like a rock once that cold front moves through. Also going to change that precipitation over to the chance of some flurries as well as you get into the evening hours. Now, it should stay quite mild up across the Big Land, or the rest of the Big Land, through the day on Thursday, and then same thing across the island portion of the province as well. So 18, 19 degrees, again, feeling a little bit warmer than that. And then the northern peninsula, you'll hover around 13 or 14 degrees through the day. And again, a little bit more unsettled with that chance of showers. You may see the sun peek out at times in the afternoon, but overall it will be an unsettled day for your Thursday. Watch that transition line there where we go from rain to snow. That will definitely happen Thursday night. And then as that front continues to move through, it will cool things off. We'll see some drier air move in, and then also some sunshine through the day on Friday as well. We're going to hang on to that chance of flurries up across portions of Labrador, particularly the west, heading towards central Labrador as we get into the afternoon, and then coastal areas as well. You'll see that potential, but take a look at what's happening across the island. Nothing. We should see lots of sunshine through the day, but much cooler temperatures. In fact, 10, 11, 12 degrees colder for your Friday. Temperatures still going to stay mild in the morning, at least for eastern areas of the island, but they will drop once that front moves through, and you'll notice that happen fairly significantly, fairly quickly rather, through the day. Up across Labrador, your temperature sitting between 0 and 5 degrees. And again, that chance of some flurries in the mix for you. Taking a look at the long-range forecast. Double digits, barely, 10, 11 degrees for your weekend, and some sunshine at least on Saturday. Sunday, maybe a few showers, but we will see those milder temperatures back into the teens as we get into next week. So certainly going to keep an eye on that one. Now for central Newfoundland, single digits for your Friday, but they'll rebound nicely for your Saturday with some sunshine, so it'll feel pretty beautiful. And then the chance of a few showers on your Sunday, but around 11 degrees. Now for western Newfoundland, you're looking at some showers by the time we get into Sunday, and down to the single digits, 9, 10 degrees this weekend. Overnight lows, though, really starting to dip down into the low single digits for you. Now, as far as eastern Labrador goes, we get into that chance of some flurries on Friday. By Saturday, a few showers because temperatures are going to warm up, and then into Sunday, same thing. However, hanging on to those mid-single digits for western Labrador as you see your temperatures around 5 degrees, but also the chance of some showers or some flurries through the day. Now take a look at this great shot. This is actually the view of Clarenville from the Bear Mountains.
Gorgeous.
So yeah, beautiful. A Bear Mountain, I should say. Denise shared this great shot with us. There have been some beautiful fall colors around as well. So if you have any photos, definitely share them with us. And if you'd like to share them, you can send them to my Facebook page, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
And with all the sunshine we've been having, it's like the trees are glowing with all of those fall colors. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, I actually saw some pictures on Twitter that the lupins are still blooming. There's
Really?
lots of flowers, like even in my backyard, they're still
Now
still
you
going.
say that, I still have some flowers that are still blooming too.
Yeah, it's nice to see, but it is the end of October.
Yeah.
But again, we will see that drop in temperatures.
And then we get into Halloween soon.
Oh yeah, next week.
Yeah.
Or this
we'll talk
weekend.
about that probably tomorrow.
Absolutely.
That's it for us. Good night, everyone.
Good night.